When my mother said my failure was contagious, I stayed silent and signed the $2.5 million transfer for the new house. They didn't come to hug me. They came to count the bedrooms. A week later, the family meeting turned into a shakedown, and I opened the court summons they never saw coming. My name is Mila Reyes. I am 33 years old, and on a Tuesday at 4:17 in the afternoon, my career at Larkspur and Slate ended. It ended not with a conversation, but with a calendar notification from HR titled Organizational Update that was set for 4:30. The email severing my employment, however, arrived 3 minutes later, at 4:20. The subject line was simply, "Your transition." It was a masterpiece of corporate neutralization. Words like restructuring, right-sizing, and valuable contributions were used to paint a picture of an unfortunate but necessary business decision. It was a lie. This was not a restructuring. This was a scapegoat. I knew this because at the exact moment the email alert chimed, I was putting the finishing stroke on the final slide of the 80-page strategy deck for the Atherton project, the same project that was now being cited as the primary reason for the strategic shift in my department, the project my boss, David, had personally redirected 2 weeks ago, overriding my data and my explicit warnings. He had insisted on a high-risk, high-visibility pivot against all market indicators. He had driven the car off the cliff, and the email in my inbox was his way of ensuring I was the only one trapped in the wreckage. My transition email arrived just as I had saved the file that proved I had done my job, and the file that he would now present as his own, with the problematic elements conveniently removed. A strange, cold calm settled over me. I looked at the numbers in my personal savings account that morning. I had enough to live on for 9 months, maybe 10, if I was careful. It was a buffer I had built meticulously, a secret get-out fund that I never truly thought I'd need for this. I thought it was for starting my own consultancy, for a trip to Spain, for freedom. Instead, it was for this. It was for the ability to stand up without my legs shaking. I did not reply to the email. I did not click on the link to the Exit Resources portal. I simply logged off. I packed my noise-canceling headphones, my favorite pen, and the small framed photo of a beach in Maine. I left the company-issued laptop. I left the ergonomic mouse. I left the sad little succulent that had been dying for 6 months. I walked past David's office. He was on a call, laughing. I walked out of the revolving glass doors of the Larkspur and Slate building, my keycard already deactivated, and stepped onto the concrete of the sidewalk. The air felt different. I sat in my car for 10 full minutes, the engine off. I didn't cry. I just watched the numbers on the dashboard clock. 4:58, 4:59, 5 o'clock. My first instinct was to call my mother. Helena. It was a reflex, old and worn as a river stone. I dialed. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Mila. You're calling early. Her voice was thin, already suspicious. I'm done at Larkspur. Mom, they let me go. Restructuring. A sigh. Not a sympathetic one. It was a sigh of exasperation, of inconvenience. Oh, Mila, I told you that place was too high stress. You always aim for these things you can't quite hold on to. I stared at a crack in my windshield. David scuttled the Atherton project. He pinned it on me. David, Wyatt, it's always some man's fault, isn't it? She said. You know, Wyatt called. He asked how you were. Wyatt, my ex-boyfriend, a man whose personality was as beige as his apartment walls, a man who defined ambition as getting a 2% raise on his dental hygienist salary, a man my mother adored. Mom, I just lost my job. I'm not thinking about Wyatt. Well, maybe you should be, she snapped, the irritation breaking through. He's stable, Mila. He has a good job. He has benefits. He wants to settle down. You're 33. You can't afford to be so picky, especially not now. A man like that, he's security. You should call him. It's the sensible thing to do. Security, an anchor. The words felt the same. I have to go. Mom. Just think about it. Be smart for once. She hung up. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat. My hands were shaking now, not from the job loss, but from the familiar, icy chill of my mother's pragmatism. My phone buzzed again, a text from my older sister. Brielle, Mom told me, awful news. But hey, silver lining, my boyfriend's insurance firm is hiring. It's just data entry, totally entry level. But it's a job, right? You could probably do it. I'll ask him. Don't worry, you'll be on your feet in no time. Entry level. After 8 years of managing multi-million-dollar client portfolios. After a master's degree, you could probably do it. The condescension was so thick it was suffocating. I didn't reply. The phone rang again. My younger brother, Colton. Hey, so, that sucks, he began. Yeah, Colton, it does. Look, maybe this is a sign. You've been trying so hard at this whole career woman thing. It's not working out. Is it? You're always stressed. You're not dating anyone. I closed my eyes. What's your point? Colton. My point is, maybe it's time to focus on what matters. You should be putting yourself out there, going out, meeting someone. Instead of worrying about these fantasy jobs, maybe you should be trying to find a husband. I hung up the phone. Not on him. Not really. I just pressed the red icon. The silence that followed was a relief. I had been fired, and in the space of 15 minutes, my family had diagnosed the problem my job was irrelevant, my experience was worthless, and my single status was the real emergency. That Sunday was the requisite family dinner. I thought about canceling. I thought about claiming I had the flu, a flat tire, a sudden onset plague, but I knew that would only be interpreted as weakness, as wallowing, so I drove the 20 minutes to my parents' house in Ridgedale. When I walked in, the dinner table was already set. My mother, my father, Brielle, and Colton, and in the middle, between my father and Brielle, was my spot, with 2 empty chairs, one on either side of my plate. They had literally left a buffer zone, a quarantine, as if my unemployment was a virus I might breathe on them. Oh, Mila, you're here, my mother said, wiping her hands on her apron. We're so glad you're not letting this get you down. Don't worry, Brielle said with a tight smile. We're all here for you. The dinner was a clinical dissection of my perceived failures. You have to be careful with your money now, my father said, his first contribution to the conversation. He was a man who spoke rarely, but always in pronouncements. You're not on the big corporate salary anymore. Every penny counts. That's right, my mother chimed in. I've been telling you for years. You water down the dish soap, 1 part soap, 3 parts water. It lasts 4 times as long. 4 times. And you should be walking more, Brielle added, pushing peas around her plate. That drive from your apartment is at least a gallon of gas. You could walk to the grocery store, to the library. It's good for you. And it saves money. You should probably cancel all those subscriptions, Colton said, his mouth full. Netflix, Spotify, whatever else you waste money on. You can just use Mom's account. I sat there, my food growing cold. I listened. I nodded. I was back in my old job. I was an insights professional. And this was a focus group. The product was me. The feedback was universally negative. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to scrub me of whatever ambition and difference I had, to reduce me back down to their size, to make me small and scared and safe. They were terrified of my failure because, to them, it was a reflection on them. I said nothing. I just took mental notes. Helena sees failure as a social disease, views marriage as the only viable vaccine. Brielle sees failure as an opportunity to establish her own superiority. Help is a form of dominance. Colton sees female failure as a return to the natural order. Career is a distraction from the primary goal of matrimony. Father sees failure in terms of cents and dollars, a spreadsheet imbalance. I ate my dry pot roast. I swallowed their advice, and I kept my silence. I had one habit they all knew about, and which they all despised. Every Friday, on my way home from work from my former work, I would stop at the same small corner market on Maple and 3rd. It was a tiny place, run by Mr. Patel. He was not a relative. He was not a family friend. He was just a man who sold milk and bread and lottery tickets every Friday. For the past 5 years, I had walked in and I had bought one $10 Mega Millions ticket. $10, not 50, not 100, just 10. It was a stupid, hopeful, harmless ritual. Mr. Patel always smiled when I bought it. "This week is your turn, Miss Mila," he would say, his eyes twinkling. "I feel it. We'll see. Mr. Patel, we'll see," I would reply. My family thought it was pathetic. "It's a tax on the poor," Brielle would say, quoting some article she'd skimmed. $10 is $10. "Mila," my mother would scold. "That's 2 bottles of dish soap, if you dilute it." "Just desperate," Colton would mutter. I didn't care. It was my $10. It was my 5-minute fantasy. It was the one part of my week that was not optimized, not strategic, not reviewed by committee. It was mine. That night, after the dinner, after the quarantine seating and the financial advice, I drove home. I did not go straight to my apartment. I drove to Maple and 3rd. It wasn't Friday. It was Sunday. But the neon open sign was buzzing. Mr. Patel was behind the counter, sweeping. He looked up, surprised. "Miss Mila, it is not Friday." "I know," I said, pulling a $10 bill from my wallet. "I had a rough day. I'm playing this week's numbers a little early." He smiled. A different smile this time. A kind one. He took the bill and printed the ticket. He didn't say his usual line. He just handed it to me. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the map is not the land. You will find your way." I walked back to my car, the little slip of paper in my hand. I went home. I didn't check job sites. I didn't call Wyatt. I didn't start watering down my soap. I poured a glass of wine. I sat on my balcony, and I looked out over the quiet, dark streets of Ridgedale, Ohio. I decided, for tonight, I would just breathe. I would just be, and I said the words to myself, a new mantra. I am not bad at this. I was just in the wrong place. The map of my life was not just shifting, it was about to be obliterated. I spent the next few days in a strange, gray fog. I updated my resume, the document feeling like a work of fiction. I dutifully applied for 3 jobs I did not want, optimizing keywords and writing cover letters that felt like lies. I even, in a moment of bleak curiosity, watered down my dish soap. My mother was right. It lasted longer. It also felt thin and useless, like weak tea. Friday came and went. I did not go to Maple and 3rd. I already had my ticket. Saturday morning. I woke up late. The sun already high and cutting sharp, dusty lines across my living room floor. The apartment was too quiet. I made coffee. I sat on the sofa. My laptop opened to another job board, the screen glaring. And then I remembered the ticket, still in the pocket of the lightweight jacket I had worn on Sunday. It was mostly a reflex, checking the numbers, a small, familiar ritual of disappointment to start the weekend. I opened the state lottery website. The winning numbers for the Friday Mega Millions drawing were posted at the top of the page. 14, 22, 30, 49, 51, Mega Ball 9. I pulled the small, folded slip of paper from my pocket. I smoothed it flat on the coffee table. My numbers were on the 3rd line. 14, 22, 30. My heart gave a stupid little kick. I always matched 2 or 3. 49. My vision narrowed. 51. The coffee cup in my hand began to shake. I looked at the last number on my ticket line. Mega Ball 9. I stared at the ticket. I stared at the screen. The world did not speed up. It stopped. Everything went silent, except for the sudden, violent roar of blood in my ears. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic on the street below, the faint ticking of the clock on the microwave. It all evaporated. I looked at the ticket. I looked at the screen. The cursor on my laptop blinked, blinked, blinked. My numbers. The winning numbers. 6 numbers. A perfect, impossible match. The jackpot. $120 million. I very slowly, very carefully, lowered the coffee cup to the table. I missed the coaster. A dark ring of coffee immediately began to spread on the wood. I did not care. I could not find my breath. I had to consciously think, breathe in. The air felt thick, like swallowing velvet. Breathe out. My pulse was not racing. It was slow, thudding, a heavy, deep thump, 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 against my ribs, as if my heart was suddenly too large for my chest, as if it was pushing its way out. I held up my phone. The screen was dark. I pressed the side button. The screen flared to life, acting as a mirror. I saw my reflection. My eyes were wide, the pupils blown, reflecting the white light of the laptop screen. I looked terrified. I was watching myself react. I saw my hands. They were trembling, not a violent shake, but a fine, high-frequency vibration, like a plucked guitar string. $120 million. I did the math, the cash option, the federal tax bracket, the state tax. I was an analyst. I was good with numbers. It would not be the full amount. I did a quick, frantic calculation on the back of an envelope. Cash lump sum, minus the 37% federal withholding, minus the Ohio state tax. It would be somewhere around $70 million. $70 million. I said the words aloud to the empty room. $70 million. The sound was alien. It was too large. It did not fit in my small apartment, with its water-stained ceiling and its view of a brick wall. My hand, still vibrating, moved across the table. It picked up the phone. My thumb unlocked it. My finger went to my contacts, the reflex, the old, worn Riverstone. My finger hovered over the contact name Mom. I could hear her voice. I could hear the shock, the shriek, the disbelief turning into, what joy relief. My daughter, the winner. My thumb pressed down, just millimeters from the green call icon, and then I saw it, not as a memory, but right in front of me, as clearly as the coffee cup staining the table, the dinner table, the dry pot roast, the two empty chairs on either side of me, the quarantine zone. I heard Brielle's voice, laced with pity. Totally entry level, but you could probably do it. I heard Colton's voice, heavy with judgment. Maybe you should be trying to find a husband. And I heard my mother's voice, sharp and cold and final. Your failure is contagious. My thumb lifted. It moved away from the call icon. I set the phone down on the table, face down. A different thought settled in, crystalline and cold. No. I said it again, this time to the blinking cursor on the laptop. No, not yet. They didn't want Mila the failure. They would have to wait for Mila the success. I looked at the calendar on my kitchen wall. It was October. Christmas, I whispered. Christmas Eve will be the gift. A miracle, just like they wanted. The adrenaline finally hit, but it was not panic. It was focus. It was the white-hot clarity I used to feel at Larkspur when a multi-million-dollar project was collapsing and I had 12 hours to save it. I was no longer an unemployed 33-year-old woman. I was the CEO of a $70 million corporation, and the product was my new life. I grabbed a fresh legal pad from my desk, the kind I used to buy at the office supply store. I took my favorite pen, a heavy black rollerball. I sat at my dining table. I made a list. 1. Pay off Brielle's mortgage. She complained about it constantly, the adjustable rate, the crushing payments. 2. Full college fund for Colton's 2 kids. They were 3 and 5. He could stop worrying about that, at least. 3. Retire Mom and Dad, pay off their house, set up an annuity. They could stop diluting the soap and worrying about the gas bill. This was the first list, the easy list, the family list. This was the gift. I looked at the list, at the sheer generosity, and I felt good. I felt magnanimous. I felt like the person I was supposed to be, the person I wanted to be. This is what family does. I folded that page over. I started a new page. This was the real list. 1. Call no one. 2. Sign the ticket. I flipped the small paper over and signed Mila Reyes in the small box on the back. 3. Find a lawyer. Find a wealth manager. Not just any, the right ones. I opened my laptop. I didn't go back to the job sites. I went to Google. I did not search for best financial advisor in Ridgedale. I searched for largest lottery winners' privacy, sudden wealth management specialists, and protecting anonymity jackpot. The next 5 hours were a blur of research. I learned about trusts. I learned about LLCs. I learned about the press, the demands, the dangers, the parasites. One name kept appearing in forums and articles about people who had successfully navigated this exact storm. Gideon Price, a wealth manager based in Chicago, not Ohio. His firm specialized in high-profile, sudden liquidity events. It was a cold, corporate way of saying people who get too much money too fast. His clients were not just lottery winners. They were athletes drafted into the pros, tech founders post-IPO, and high-profile widows. I found his firm's website. It was stark, gray and black, no pictures of families sailing or laughing on a beach. I called the main number. It was Saturday. I expected an answering service, a voicemail tree. A human voice answered on the second ring. Crisp, professional. Price advisory. Hello? I said, my voice shaky. The first words I had spoken in hours. My name is Mila. I have a question about a potential liquidity event. One moment. There was a click, and then a new voice, deep and impossibly calm. This is Gideon Price. Mr. Price, I think I just won the lottery. His voice did not change. There was no excitement, no congratulations. You think? No, I said, my hand closing over the ticket on the table. I did. I have the ticket, $120 million. Have you told anyone? No. Good. Do not tell your mother, your brother, your best friend, or your dog. Am I clear? Yes. Are you in a safe location? Are you alone? Yes. In my apartment? Here's what happens next. You are going to get in your car on Monday morning. You will drive to Chicago. You will not tell anyone where you are going. You will tell them you have a job interview if you must. You will bring the ticket. You will not let it out of your sight. You will walk into my office at 10 a.m. We will validate the ticket, and we will set up the blind trust that will claim it. Your name, Mila Reyes, will never appear on a single public document related to this. He gave me the address. Mr. Price, I said, I have a plan. I want to tell my family. At Christmas, I have a list. Debts, college funds, retirement for them. There was a long pause on the line. I heard him take a slow breath. Mila, he said, and his voice was softer now, almost sad. That is a noble list, but I must warn you, money is a strange substance. It doesn't change who you are. It just makes you more of who you have always been. And it does the same thing to everyone around you. They're my family, I said. The words automatic, the Riverstone reflex. I hope you're right, Gideon said. My job is to protect the money. Your job will be to protect yourself. See you Monday at 10. He hung up. The next 2 months were a performance. I was Mila Reyes, the unemployed daughter. I drove to Chicago. I met Gideon. He was exactly as his voice had suggested, tall, dressed in an impeccable suit, and utterly, unnervingly calm. We set up the trust. I named it the Maple and Third Holdings Trust, a little nod to Mr. Patel. We hired a law firm. They handled the claim. I rented a private P.O. box in a different zip code to handle the initial setup mail. My name was never mentioned. The press reported the $120 million prize was claimed by an anonymous trust registered in Illinois. I went to Sunday dinners. I listened to my mother's increasingly anxious hints about Wyatt. I took the notes Brielle gave me for the entry-level data job, and I smiled and said, "Thank you. This is so helpful. I'll look into it." I listened to Colton talk about the rising cost of preschool and how he and his wife were drowning. I walked to the grocery store, just as Brielle suggested. I diluted my dish soap, just as my mother instructed. I played the part, and inside, I was a fortress. Gideon was wrong about one thing. Money was changing me. It was giving me a spine. It was a secret. It was a shield. Every time they looked at me with pity, with that subtle, corrosive disappointment, I held my secret close. I was planning the miracle, the grand reveal on Christmas Eve. I imagined their faces, the shock, the tears of joy, the hugs. I would be the hero. I would be the savior who walked back into the family, arms laden with gifts, forgiving them for their blindness. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. It was early December. The first wire transfer, a staggering sum, had cleared from the state lottery commission to the trust's high-security bank account. I looked at my reflection. I looked at Mila Reyes, the failure, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a forgiving smile. It was a tight, closed-mouth smile, full of knowledge. It was the smile of a person holding all the cards. The title of the story was beginning to write itself in my head. I knew the beginning, I just did not know the end. I kept the performance running for 2 months. I was a model of diminished expectations. I sent Gideon Price weekly reports on my frugality, detailing how I was adhering to the strict, low-profile budget he'd set. We were moving the money, bit by bit, through a series of legal structures, letting it cool, letting it settle. My $70 million was now a quiet, invisible engine humming just beneath the surface of my life. I was also finalizing the Christmas Eve plan. I had packets prepared. Beautiful, cream-colored envelopes, embossed, not with a bank logo, but with a simple, elegant pine tree. Inside, I had letters prepared by the law firm, a notification for my parents of a newly established, fully funded retirement trust. A certificate for Brielle stating her mortgage balance of $241,000 had been paid in full. A document for Colton establishing a 529 college savings plan for each of his children, funded with $50,000 apiece. I was the benevolent savior, just waiting for my cue. I had the script, the props, the big reveal. I imagined the tears, the stunned silence, the gratitude that would finally wash away the quarantine. The phone call came 1 week before Christmas. I was wrapping a $10 bottle of wine for my Secret Santa with some old college friends. My phone lit up. "Mom," I answered, ready to confirm my arrival time for Christmas Eve dinner. "Hi, Mom. I was just thinking about..." "Mila, don't come." The words were flat. No preamble, no apology. I stopped wrapping. The cheap red ribbon went limp in my hand. What are you talking about?" "To Christmas. Don't come." "Mom, what happened? Did I forget something?" I heard her take a long, deep sigh, the kind she used when she was about to deliver a verdict. "Mila, it's been a hard year for everyone. Brielle is so stressed about her mortgage payments, and Colton is worried sick about the kids' future. Your father and we're not getting any younger. We need a positive Christmas. We need a break." I stood very still. "A break? From what?" "From the energy," she said, her voice dropping. "It's just, this whole unemployment thing, it's been going on for months now. You don't seem to be trying. And that failure, it's contagious. It's a weight. We can't have that weight in the house on Christmas. We need to be uplifting, for the kids." Failure is contagious. The same words she had used before. But this time, they were not a warning. They were a diagnosis. I was the disease. "So, you're uninviting me, from Christmas." "It's just for this year," she said, her voice brightening, as if she'd just solved the problem. "Get yourself back on your feet. Find a nice, stable man. And next year will be wonderful. It's for the best. For everyone." Before I could answer, she said, "I have to go. The roast is burning. I'll call you after the holiday." Click, she was gone. My phone was silent in my hand. My blood was not roaring, as it had been on the day I won. It was cold. It was frighteningly still. My phone buzzed. A new message in the Reyes family group chat. It was from Betrayal. Hey everyone, just confirming Mom's plan. No Mila this year. We all agree it's better to keep the vibe positive. No hard feelings. Mila. We just all really need this holiday. Colton replied 2 seconds later with a thumbs up emoji. My father replied, okay. I looked at the phone. I looked at the cream-colored envelope still sitting on my table. The one for Betrayal, mortgage paid in full. The one for Colton, $100,000. The one for my parents, retirement. I looked at the group chat, no hard feelings, and then I started to laugh. It was not a good laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was a dry, scraping sound that came from deep in my chest. It was the laugh of a person who had just been handed the punchline to the cruelest joke in the world. I laughed until tears started to well in my eyes, hot and sharp. I laughed because I had almost handed $70 million, my entire new life, to a group of people who had just excommunicated me for being a bad vibe. I laughed because my mother was right. I was a failure. I was a failure at understanding who my family truly was. I picked up the phone. I did not call them. I did not beg. I called Gideon Price. Mila, he said, his voice as calm at 9 p.m. as it was at 9 a.m. Is there a problem? No, Gideon, I said, wiping a tear from my cheek. No problem at all. I just need to liquidate a small amount. Say $70,000 in cash. Can you have that for me by tomorrow morning? There was a pause. That is an unusual request. It's a baptism, I said, and I was still laughing. Just a little. I'll be there at 10. The next morning, I walked into a dealership in a wealthy suburb of Columbus, 2 hours away, where no one knew my face. I was not wearing my usual unemployed daughter uniform of jeans and an old sweater. I was wearing a black sheath dress, the one I used to reserve for major client pitches. I had a $90,000 certified check in my purse, courtesy of Gideon's discreet arrangements. A salesman, all teeth and cologne, glided over. Can I help you, Miss? Yes, I said. I want the silver coupe, the 2-door, the one in the window. He looked me over, his smile tightening. He was evaluating my credit score based on my sensible shoes. That's a very spirited machine. Perhaps I could show you a nice sedan, something more practical for commuting. I don't commute, I said. I pulled the check from my bag and laid it on his desk. I want that one, and I'm paying cash. $68,000. You can fill in the rest for the taxes and fees. His smile vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed stare. 2 hours later, I drove off the lot in a gleaming metallic silver coupe that could go from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. The engine was a low, angry purr. I put all the windows down, let the cold December air whip my hair across my face, and I drove. I did not go home. I just drove. My phone rang. It was Betrayal. I let it ring for a moment, then answered, my voice amplified by the car's Bluetooth. Hello, Betrayal? Mila. Where are you? It's so loud. I'm just out, I said, downshifting on a long, open stretch of highway. The engine roared in appreciation. What is that noise? Is that your car? It sounds broken. It's new. A beat of silence. New Mila. You cannot be buying a new car right now. You don't have a job. What did you do? Did you lease something? How much is it? What's the interest rate? It's a coupe, I said. Silver. A coupe, like 2 doors. That is the most irresponsible thing I have ever heard. How much? $68,000, I said. The silence on the other end was exquisite. It was so total. I thought she might have dropped the phone. Then, a noise, a sharp, barking laugh. Oh, Mila, you're joking. Thank God. You really had me. 68,000. That's hilarious. So, what did you really get? I have to go. Betrayal, the signal is breaking up. Wait, are you okay? Are you having some kind of breakdown? Did you drain your savings? Is that what you did? You burned your last safety net on a car. Merry Christmas, Brielle, I said, and I hung up. Christmas Eve, the night of the grand reveal. I was not at my parents' house, sitting in the quarantine zone. I was alone, by choice. I had made a reservation 2 weeks prior, under a false name, at the Riverside Gentlemen's Club and Grill. It was the kind of place my father would have called sinfully expensive: dark wood, leather chairs, waiters in tuxedos. It was an old-world steakhouse where deals were signed and men celebrated victories. I sat in a high-backed booth, alone. I ordered the largest porterhouse steak on the menu, a $300 bottle of Cabernet I couldn't pronounce, and a side of everything: oysters, creamed spinach, lobster mac and cheese. My meal cost $350. I ate slowly. I savored every bite. I drank the wine. I watched the other tables, families clinking glasses, couples holding hands. I felt no envy. I felt no loneliness. I felt free. This was my new baptism. This was my liberty. I raised my glass to the empty seat across from me. To positive energy, I said quietly. I took the cream-colored envelopes from my purse, the retirement trust, the paid mortgage, the college funds. I looked at them. Then, I signaled for the waiter. Is there a fireplace in here? I asked. Yes, madam. In the main lounge. Thank you. I paid the bill in cash, with a $100 tip, and I walked to the lounge. The fire was roaring. I stood in front of it, the heat warming my face. One by one, I took the envelopes and I dropped them into the flames. The warm, loving reveal plan was gone. It burned to ash, along with the paper. A new plan was forming, clear and cold and precise. I was an insights analyst. My family was a focus group. The old plan was to give them a gift. The new plan, I would give them a stimulus, and I would observe the response. 2 weeks later, I called Anya Locke. Her name was on a list Gideon had given me, under the heading Discrete Assets. She was a real estate broker, but she didn't sell houses. She sold fortresses. She sold privacy. Her clients were hedge fund managers, exiled royalty, and tech billionaires. She answered on the first ring, her voice like cut glass. Anya Locke. Ms. Locke, my name is Mila Ellery. I used my middle name. It felt safer. I am a client of Gideon Price. He said you could help me. The glassiness warmed, just slightly. Gideon, of course. What are you looking for? Miss Ellery. A new residence. Location preferences, style budget. I'm flexible on location, but not in Ohio, somewhere with space. As for style, I'll know it when I see it. Security, however, is non-negotiable. Gated, private, high-end. And as for budget, I said, taking a breath, there is no limit. The next week was a blur. Anya's private jet picked me up. We did not tour. We assessed. A glass and steel modern monstrosity in Colorado, built into the side of a mountain, a sprawling, neoclassical estate in Virginia, complete with horse stables, a stunning riverfront compound in South Carolina, draped in moss and history. They were all beautiful. They were all wrong. They were empty. Not these, I told Anya, as we sipped champagne at 35,000 feet. She smiled. I didn't think so. I have one more. It's a bit of a wild card. Hudson Bluffs, New York. We landed at a private airfield. A black car took us through a series of imposing security gates, winding up a long drive shrouded in pine trees, and then, the trees parted. It wasn't a house. It was a statement. It was perched on a cliff overlooking the Hudson River. It was all stone and glass and sharp, clean angles, 5 bedrooms, an infinity pool that seemed to spill directly into the sky, a garden filled not with flowers, but with stark, beautiful, metal sculptures. We walked inside. The lobby was a 2-story atrium with a glass ceiling. This is it, I said, my voice quiet. Don't you want to see the kitchen? Anya asked, surprised. I don't care about the kitchen. I looked out the massive wall of glass at the river below. I'll take it. Mila, this is a significant property. The asking price is, I'll take it, I said again. I wired the $2.5 million that afternoon, a full price, all cash offer. We closed in 48 hours. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anyone. I hired a team, not movers, not designers. I hired stagers, the kind of people who prepare homes for magazine shoots. I want it furnished, I told them. Perfect, by the end of the month. I walked through the empty, echoing rooms. This was my new office, my new headquarters. This room, the one with the view. This would be the clarity room. This one, the library. This would be the strategy room. This one, the master bedroom. This would be the sanctuary. I was building my fortress, and the first rule of any fortress is to know exactly where your enemies are. I had a feeling they would find me soon enough. I lived in the Hudson Bluffs house for a week, and it felt like living inside a modern art museum. The staging company had been ruthlessly efficient. Everything was shades of white, gray, and deep blue. The furniture was beautiful and uncomfortable. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the distant rush of the river far below. I spent my days walking from the clarity room to the strategy room, my stocking feet silent on the polished concrete floors. I was an alien in this new habitat, a ghost in a machine built for a life I had not yet learned how to live. The first ripple from the outside world came not as a wave, but as a polite email from my former landlord in Ridgedale. Subject forwarding mail. Hi Mila, hope you're well. A young woman stopped by the apartment today asking for you. Said she was your sister. She seemed quite surprised to hear that you'd moved out and that I'd already re-rented the unit. I told her I couldn't give out your new address, of course, but she was very insistent. Do you have a forwarding address you'd like me to use, Betrayal? Of course. She had gone to my old apartment, expecting to find me. What wallowing in squalor selling my furniture for food. The image of her standing on that worn-out linoleum, baffled, brought a cold smile to my face. My investigator. I ignored the email. I was, after all, a client of Gideon Price. My mail was being routed through a complex web of P.O. boxes and corporate registration agents. My old landlord had nothing to forward. Then, as if a switch had been thrown, my phone began to detonate. It was not a gradual increase. It was an assault. First came the texts to the Reyes family group chat. Betrayal, went by Mila's old place. She's gone. Landlord said she moved. Didn't leave an address. Colton, what like? Skip town, Mom. She's not answering her phone. I've called 3 times. Betrayal. This is not normal. She must be in some kind of trouble. That car. Mom Mila Reyes. You pick up this phone, right now. The calls began. One after another. A cascade of familial panic. Mom. Betrayal. Colton. Dad. Mom again. Betrayal. I was sitting on a $20,000 sofa overlooking the Hudson River, watching my phone vibrate itself across the glass coffee table. The screen lit up, illuminating their names, one after another. In my old life, this would have sent me into a spiral of anxiety. I would have been desperate to manage their feelings, to soothe their manufactured crisis. Now I watched it with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a chemical reaction. I let it go to voicemail. Every single call. For 48 hours, the voicemails were a masterclass in escalation. Helena. At first, Mila, honey, it's your mother. Call me. We're all just worried. Helena. 2 hours later. Mila, this is not funny. You're behaving like a child. Pick up the phone. Did something happen with that ridiculous car? Helena. The next morning. I am at my wit's end. You are either in a hospital, or you are the most selfish girl I have ever raised. What is wrong with you? Call me. I let them simmer in their own panic. I was learning the power of silence, the power of the vacuum. Finally, on the 3rd day, as I was drinking a perfect espresso from a machine that cost more than my first car, My mother called again. This time, I answered. The connection was instant. She didn't say hello. "Where are you?" The shriek was so loud I pulled the phone away from my ear. "I'm fine. Mom, what's wrong?" "What's wrong? What's wrong? We have been sick with worry. You disappear. You buy some stupid car. You abandon your apartment. Are you homeless? Is that it? Did you spend all your money? If you're living in that car, you need to sell it immediately and get your security deposit back." I looked out the 2-story glass wall at the sculpture garden. The steel was catching the morning light. "I'm not homeless, Mom." "Then where are you?" "Are you in a shelter? Brielle said you might be in some kind of women's shelter, that you've had a breakdown." "I didn't have a breakdown," I said, my voice calm. It was amazing how calm I felt. "Then talk to me. What is going on? We are your family. We are trying to help you." "I'm fine," I said. "I'm just busy. I'm handling things. Don't worry about me." "Don't worry. Don't." I hung up. I did not slam the phone down. I just pressed the red end call icon. A simple digital severing. I then powered the phone off. The silence that followed was magnificent. I did not hear from them for 2 weeks. I assumed, correctly, that my single, dismissive act had sent their internal investigation into overdrive. I used the time. I met with Anya to finalize the security details. I had Gideon's legal team, led by a shark in a Chanel suit named Ms. Dalrymple, finalize the bylaws for the Maple and Third Trust. I swam in my infinity pool. The water heated to a perfect 85 degrees. I read books in the library. I was, for the first time in my life, completely and totally alone, and I was not lonely. Then, on a Tuesday, it happened. I was in the kitchen, learning how the high-tech steam oven worked. The internal security panel chimed. Not the doorbell for the front door, but the alert for the main security gate, a half-mile down the private drive. I walked to the panel. The camera feed showed a car I did not recognize, a sensible, domestic sedan stopped at the call box. And then, a figure leaned out the window. Brielle. She looked small and insignificant next to the massive, imposing stone pillars. "I'm here to see Mila Reyes," she said, her voice tinny over the speaker. The security guard I had on retainer patched through to my earpiece. "Ma'am, a Brielle Reyes is at the main gate. She is not on the list." My heart did not pound. It just settled. The stimulus. The response. "It's fine, Robert," I said. "Let her through. But only her. Just her." "Yes, ma'am." The gate opened. I watched on the panel as her little car wound its way up the long, pine-shaded drive. She was driving slowly, as if she was lost, as if she couldn't believe the road kept going. I walked to the front door, the massive, pivoting slab of walnut. I did not wait for her to ring. I opened it myself. Just as her car pulled into the circular cobblestone court, stopping 10 feet from my silver coupe, she got out of the car. She was wearing her usual uniform, a slightly too small blazer, sensible flats, and an expression of stressed-out superiority. But that expression faltered. It melted. She looked at the house. She looked up and up. She looked at the stone, the glass, the sheer, impossible scale of it. She looked at me, standing in the doorway. She was pale. "Mila," she whispered, as if she was seeing a ghost. "Hello, Brielle," I said. "You're a long way from Ridgedale." She walked, as if in a trance, into the 2-story atrium. She spun in a slow circle, her mouth slightly open, her eyes darting from the glass ceiling to the floating staircase. What is this?" she stammered. "Where are we? Did you get a job as a house sitter?" "No," I said. "I live here." "You live? Mila, this is not funny. This has to be, like, a $50 million house." 2.5, I said, correcting her. "It was a bargain." She stumbled, literally, catching her heel on the edge of a rug. She walked past me, into the main living area. The one with the wall of glass overlooking the river. Her face, which had been pale, was now turning a blotchy red. The shock was wearing off, replaced by the familiar Reyes family suspicion. "No," she said, her voice sharp. "No, you did not buy this. You did not. How you were fired. You had a breakdown. We all thought so." "I'm fine. Brielle?" "Then how?" she shouted, her voice echoing in the cavernous room. "How did you find me? How did you get this? Did you marry someone? Did you meet some old, rich man?" "No," I said. "I'm not married." "Then who did you rob?" she finally spat out, the words ugly and raw. "Who did you steal this from?" I had prepared for this moment. I did not pull out a bank statement. I did not show her a deed. I picked up my phone, which was on the kitchen counter. I opened my photo gallery. I found the picture I had taken the day I won. The picture of the ticket, lying flat on my old, scratched coffee table. I didn't say a word. I just held the phone out to her. She squinted at the screen. She read the numbers. 14, 22, 30, 49, 51, Megaball 9. She had heard me lament my stupid $10 habit for 5 years. She knew the game. She knew what she was looking at. The silence that filled the room was heavier than the stone walls. It was thick, suffocating. It was the sound of her entire worldview, her entire sense of superiority, her entire narrative of me collapsing into a black hole. I watched her face. I watched the gears turn, the pale shock, the red-blotched anger, and now, something new, a gray, ashen calculation. She did not say, "Congratulations." She did not say, "I'm so happy for you." She did not say, "Oh my God, Mila." She just stared at the phone, and then she looked up at me. Her eyes were not joyful. They were cold. They were assessing. She turned, her movements stiff, and walked out of the room. She did not say goodbye. I heard the front door click shut. I watched through the window as she got back into her sensible sedan. She sat there for a full minute, her hands on the steering wheel, just staring. Then, she backed the car up, drove down the long drive, and was gone. Before I could even walk back to my kitchen, my phone, the one I had just turned back on, buzzed. A new text in the Reyes family group chat. From Brielle, Mom, Dad, Colton, "You need to come to my house. Now. We have a situation. A family meeting." My own phone rang less than an hour later. It was my father. His voice was unsteady. "Mila, Brielle she just told us about a ticket." "Hello, Dad? Is it true? This house?" She said, "Yes, it's true. Mila, we need to talk. All of us. As a family. We need to have a family meeting." I looked out at my river, my fortress, my territory. "Okay," I said. "We can have a meeting." "Good. We'll be at Brielle's tonight, 8 o'clock. "No," I said. The word was cold and final. "Not at Brielle's, not at your house. Here, at my house, Sunday, 3 o'clock. "But Mila, it's a long drive. We don't even—" "Sunday, 3 o'clock, I said. "I'll text you the address for the gate." I hung up before he could answer. My next call was to Gideon. "They know," I said. "They're coming." "I expected as much," he said, his voice as calm as ever. "I will have Ms. Dalrymple on a video call standby at 2:55 p.m. Do not, under any circumstances, agree to anything, sign anything, or promise anything. This is not a reunion. It is a discovery phase. And Mila—" "Yes." "Turn on the security system, the high-definition cameras in the living room, the ones with audio. I want a full log of every guest who enters, every word that is said." "Gideon," I said, "they're my family. They are now claimants to a $70 million estate." "Mila," he corrected, "act accordingly." I hung up. I went to my strategy room, the library. I pulled out the formal, leather-bound folder that Ms. Dalrymple had sent me. Maple and Third Holdings Trust. Charter and Bylaws. I read it again. I highlighted the sections on fiduciary duty, beneficiary designations, and incapacity clauses. Sunday, 3 o'clock. I went to the kitchen. I arranged a tray, 5 glasses. A single, elegant pitcher of iced water, no coffee, no wine, no sec. This was not a social call. The boardroom was set. They arrived at 3 o'clock on the dot. I watched on the security feed as Robert, the guard, checked their IDs at the main gate. He logged Helena Reyes, Frank Reyes, Brielle Reyes, Colton Reyes, a full delegation. I opened the front door before they had a chance to ring the bell. They were huddled on the cobblestone, looking small and wind-blasted. They had driven 4 hours in Brielle's sensible sedan, and the tension was radiating off them in visible waves. "Mila," my mother said. Her voice was strained. She was trying for warmth, but it came out like a squeak. This place, it's a bit much, isn't it?" It was not a compliment. It was a judgment. It was not, "This is beautiful." It was, "This is an extravagance we do not understand and therefore must criticize." "Come in," I said. They stepped into the atrium. It was a repeat of Brielle's first visit, but multiplied by 4. My father, Frank, a man who had spent his entire life balancing a hardware store budget, just stared at the glass ceiling. His head tilted back, as if he were in a cathedral or a tomb. Colton immediately walked to the nearest wall, touching the smooth, polished concrete. "This is insane," he muttered. "What does this even cost the heating bill alone?" Brielle was silent. She was the analyst. She was calculating. Her eyes were not looking at my things. They were appraising my things. She was counting square feet, estimating property taxes, assessing my net worth. I did not give them a tour. I simply walked them into the main living room, the clarity room, the room with the wall of glass. The pitcher of water sat on the table. The invisible high-definition cameras in the ceiling were live. The audio recording was active. I sat in the single, architectural armchair. It was cold and hard, a throne of white leather and steel. They, as a unit, huddled together on the long, low-slung sofa. They looked like refugees waiting for processing. The silence stretched. They were waiting. I was waiting. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Mila, Brielle told us some story. We need to hear it from you." I decided, then, to follow Gideon's advice. This was not a reunion. It was a discovery phase. "I will give you the facts," I said. My voice was calm, and the acoustics of the room, all glass and stone, made it sound amplified. In October, a few weeks after I was let go from Larkspur, I won the Mega Millions lottery. Colton snorted, a sharp, involuntary sound. The stupid $10 ticket, the one we all made fun of." "The stupid $10 ticket," I confirmed. "The jackpot was $120 million. A sound. My mother, Helena, made a small, strangled noise, like she had been punched in the stomach. My father's eyes closed. Just for a second, Brielle leaned forward. "The whole thing. You won the whole thing." "Yes. However, that is the annuity number. I took the lump sum cash option. After all taxes, federal and state, the net payout that was deposited into the trust was approximately $70 million. I let the words hang in the air. $70 million. The silence that followed was different. It was not awe. It was not joy. It was a thick, suffocating vacuum. It was the sound of 4 human minds trying to recalibrate their entire universe. It was the sound of oxygen leaving the room. I counted. 1, 2, 3. I was waiting for a single word. Congratulations. 4, 5. It never came. Brielle was the first to speak. Her voice was a rasp. 70 million. And then, the dam broke. "Family," my mother shrieked, the word exploding out of her. She stood up, her hands clasped together. Family is the anchor. We are your family. We are the only ones you can trust. My mortgage, Brielle said, her voice cutting through my mother's. She was leaning forward, her eyes narrowed. The analyst finally showing her spreadsheet. Mila, my interest rate is adjustable. It's about to reset. We're going to be suffocated by it. We're going to lose the house. The kids, Colton yelled, his voice cracking with a sudden high-pitched panic. He stood up, too, pacing in front of the glass wall. My God. Mila, do you have any idea what college costs? We're drowning. Lily, Tom, they need a college fund. They need a future. We can't give it to them. You have to be smart, my father said, his voice a low rumble. He was still seated, but he was wringing his hands. You need to be smart with this. Mila, you can't have it sitting in cash. You need investments, real property, bonds, a family fund to protect it. She has to help us. Helena cried, her eyes filling with tears of, what joy number, desperation. Mila, honey, we were so worried. We thought you were having a breakdown, that awful car disappearing. And all this time, you were hiding this from us. The word hiding hung in the air. An accusation. They were all talking at once. Mortgage, tuition, retirement, support, family. It was a cacophony of need, a chorus of demand. I sat on my throne of white leather, and I just watched. The focus group was in full swing. The stimulus had been applied. The response was definitive. I held up one hand, not a wave, not a plea, a stop. They fell silent, their demands still hanging in their open mouths. I have heard you, I said. The quiet of my voice forced them to lean in. You have all made your concerns very clear. They stared at me, their faces a mixture of confusion and greedy anticipation. They were waiting for me to pull out a checkbook. You have given me a lot to think about, I continued. I will need time to consider everything you've said. Consider, Brielle scoffed, her mask of sisterly concern evaporating. Mila, this is family. There is nothing to consider. This is what we do. That is all for today, I said, and I stood up. The dismissal was so clean, so final. It stunned them. They were being kicked out. But, Mila, Colton stammered, we drove 4 hours. We need a plan. We should talk numbers. I said I will think about it. I walked, not to them, but to the massive front door. I pulled it open. The cold, late afternoon air rushed into the atrium. They had no choice but to follow. They filed out, dazed, like a failed delegation. As my mother passed me, her body brushed against mine. She stopped. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my sweater. Her face was close to mine, her eyes burning with a righteous, terrifying fire. You will help, she whispered, the words a fierce, venomous command. It's not a choice. You don't get to keep this. You have to. We are your family. I looked at her hand on my arm. I did not flinch. I just stared at it. She let go, as if my skin had burned her. I watched them pile back into the sedan. I watched the car drive down the long, private road. I closed the door. I turned the 3 heavy deadbolts. My phone buzzed. A text from Gideon. Audio and video files received. Clear as a bell. Well handled. Mila. Now. Wait. I waited. For 1 week. There was nothing. A total, agonizing silence. I knew they were plotting. They were back in Ohio, in a huddle, deciding on the next phase of the attack. Then, it began. Phase 2, the love bombing. It started slowly, then built to a crescendo. A text from my mother. It was a picture of me, age 5, gap-toothed, holding a drippy ice cream cone. The text I was just looking at old photos. I always knew you were my special, bright girl, my beautiful Mila. A text from my father. This one was a shock. He never texted. Mila, I have been thinking. I want you to know I am so very proud of the woman you have become. A text from Betrayal. A link to a song from a band we both loved in high school. Remember this? Drove mom crazy. Good times. We should have a sister's day. Just us. A text from Colton. A short, blurry video of his 2 children. Say hi to Aunt Mila, he prompted. Off screen. They waved. They miss you. Aunt Mila. We all do. It was a coordinated assault of manufactured nostalgia. It was cloying, suffocating, and utterly transparent. They were reminding me that I belonged to them, that I owed them for a childhood they were now retroactively painting as idyllic. I did not reply. To any of it, I just took screenshots. I saved every message, every photo, every video. I forwarded them to Ms. Dalrymple with the subject line, "For the file." Colton was the first to break ranks. His desperation was stronger than his patience. A new text, just from him. 2 days later, Mila, I don't want to be a pest. I know you're thinking. But the deadline for the early decision tuition deposit for Lily's preschool is next Friday. It's $2,500. We just don't have it. We're going to lose her spot. Please, Mila. We're desperate. The crowbar. $2,500. To me, it was now nothing. It was a bar tab. To him, it was a lever. He was trying to use his own daughter to pry open the vault. I saved the text. I did not reply. I had seen enough. The focus group was complete. The data was collected. The insights were clear. It was time for the final stimulus. It was time for the bait. I opened the Reyes family group chat. The chat that was now a shrine to our fake, happy past. I typed one sentence. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've decided you're all right. This money is a huge responsibility. I'm meeting with my lawyers tomorrow to discuss donating the entire $70 million trust to charity. It just feels like the right, pure thing to do. I hit send. I set the phone on the glass table. I looked at the clock. 10 seconds. That's how long it took. The phone did not buzz. It exploded. It was an incoming call. Not a text. From Dad. I answered, and I pressed the record call button Ms. Dalrymple had instructed me to install. What do you think you are doing? It was a roar, a scream. I had never, in 33 years, heard my father yell. This was a sound from a primal place. Dad, what's wrong? Don't you? Dad me charity. Charity? Are you insane? Are you on drugs? That is our money. That is family money. It's my money, Dad. I won it. It's not yours to give away. It's not, you're sick. You're unstable. That's what this is. I heard a scuffle on the other end, and then my mother's voice, a frantic shriek. Give me the phone. Frank, she's lost her mind. Give it to me. Mila Reyes, you listen to me right now. You are not doing this. We will not let you. We are coming over there, and we are getting you help. And then I heard it, a third voice, in the background. It was Colton. He wasn't yelling. His voice was cold, clear, and analytical. He was talking to Betrayal, but he was loud enough for the speakerphone to pick him up. No, we don't even need to drive there. Betrayal, you call your friend, the one at the courthouse. We file for an emergency psychiatric evaluation. We file for incompetence. She's unstable. She's having a breakdown. We can prove it. The car, the house. It's erratic behavior. We get a judge to declare her incapable, and the court will assign a guardian to manage the trust. There was a beat of pure, horrified silence on the line, as my mother and father processed what their son just said. Yes, Helena shrieked into the phone, her voice filled with a new, terrifying hope. That's it. We're saving you. Mila, we are saving you from yourself. You are mentally unwell. You cannot manage this. We will manage it for you. We will get a judge to declare her incapable. The words hung in the air. The final, fatal data point. They weren't just greedy. They were predators. I had the recording. I had the texts. I had the security footage from the family meeting. The project was complete. Mila, are you there? Helena screamed. We are coming. We are going to fix this. We love you. I took a slow, deep breath. The air in my $2.5 million house tasted sweet. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was finished. My heart was perfectly, wonderfully calm. No, you're not, I said. My voice was quiet. What did you say? I said, I am not giving any of you a single cent. Mila, you don't mean that. You're sick. And you are never, ever to contact me again. I hit the end call button. I opened the Reyes family group chat. I typed, goodbye. Then I went to my contacts. Mom, block, Dad, block, Brielle, block, Colton, block. My phone fell silent. The silence was total. It was the sound of a contract being closed, a project finalized, a door locked, and I was safe on the other side. The block was a digital act. The response was physical. I had built my fortress of stone and glass, but I had underestimated their sheer, rabid tenacity. Blocking their calls did not end the war. It just changed the battlefield. It moved the assault from the digital world to the physical one. It took them 48 hours to mobilize. 48 hours for the rage from that final, recorded phone call to curdle into a cohesive plan. On Tuesday, the security panel chimed. Robert, the guard, patched through to my earpiece. Ma'am, they are back. All 4 of them. I walked to the monitor in my library. The strategy room. The camera feed from the main house entrance showed Brielle's sedan. All 4 doors opened. My mother, my father, Brielle, and Colton, a full delegation, their faces pale and set, like soldiers preparing for a breach. I gave the order last week. Do not engage. Robert, do not deny entry at the main gate. Log them. Let them come to the house. They are not to be permitted entry into the house. Call the local police only if they attempt to force entry. They did not ring the bell. Not at first. They stood on the cobblestone, a mismatched, furious committee, looking up at the house as if their collective will could shatter the glass. Then, my mother, Helena, marched forward. She did not use the polite, electronic bell. She grabbed the heavy, ornate bronze knocker and struck it against the door. Bang, bang, bang. The sound was deep, percussive. It echoed in the 2-story atrium. I was sitting in my library, watching them on a high-definition, silent screen. They looked like actors in a play. Their faces contorted, their mouths moving. Bang, bang, bang. My mother was yelling. Mila, we know you are in there. Open this door. My father, trying to be the voice of reason. Mila, enough of this. We are here to help you. Then, my mother started pressing the doorbell. A frantic, bird-like stabbing. Ding-dong, 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 ding-dong. I did not move. I opened a new file on my laptop. I started a log. Tuesday, 10:17 a.m., all 4 claimants. Helena, Frank, Brielle, Colton Reyes present at residence. Attempting forced contact via knocker and doorbell. Verbal requests logged. I sipped my tea. They lasted an hour. They paced. They yelled. Brielle, I could see, was trying to walk the perimeter of the house, looking for another way in. Colton just kicked the front tire of my silver coupe. Finally, defeated. They piled back into the car. Tuesday, 11:22 a.m., all 4 claimants departed. The recording of their visit was automatically saved to the secure cloud server Ms. Dalrymple had designated. Wednesday. They changed tactics. Just Colton. He arrived at 2 o'clock. He did not knock. He walked straight to the main security camera, the one positioned next to the door. He knew he was being watched. Mila, he said, his face filling the screen. He was trying to look earnest, brotherly. Mila, come on. This is insane. This is not you. You're blowing all this up. We're just trying to talk. We're your family. You're making us worry you're not safe. What if something happened? What if you're in there? And you're sick? Just talk to me, please. It was a good performance. The concerned, loving brother, the one who, days before, had calmly suggested having me declared mentally incompetent. Wednesday, 2:04 p.m. Claimant Colton Reyes, attempted emotional appeal to camera, departed 2:35 p.m. Thursday, Brielle. She was all business. She drove her own car this time, Sheen too. Walked the perimeter. She didn't bother with the door. She was testing windows, looking at the locks, assessing the security system. She was the analyst. She was calculating weaknesses. She also found the camera. She walked right up to it, her face a mask of cold fury. "This is a mistake, Mila," she said, her voice low. No emotion. "You are making a very, very big mistake. You have no idea what you're doing. You think this house, this money, makes you smart. You're just a girl who got lucky. You need us. And you're going to lose it all, just like you lost your job. We are trying to protect you." Thursday, 12:10 p.m. Claimant Brielle Reyes, perimeter sweep, security assessment, direct verbal threat recorded. Friday, my parents. They looked terrible. They looked old, exhausted, and broken. They did not knock. They did not yell. My father just walked up to the door. He tried to slide a thick manila envelope under the massive walnut door. But the house was too well built. The weather stripping was too tight. It was a modern, hermetically sealed fortress. Frustrated, he slammed his hand against the wood. He just left the envelope on the doormat, like a threat. I watched them walk away. My mother was holding my father's arm. They looked defeated. I felt a flicker of something, not pity, not guilt. It was recognition. I was watching the final, toxic green flare of their entitlement guttering out. I waited 10 minutes. I went to the door, unlocked the deadbolts, and opened it. The cold air felt good. I picked up the envelope. It was not a letter. It was a poorly photocopied legal document, a draft. Petition for emergency, ex parte, guardianship and conservatorship, Mila Reyes. Hereinafter, the ward is believed to be of unsound mind and incapable of managing her own affairs. It listed the proof: 1. Sudden, erratic, and extravagant spending purchase of $68,000 automobile, purchase of $2,500,000 residence. 2. Sudden, hostile isolation from her concerned family. 3. Delusional statements regarding her intent to donate her entire estate. 4. Inability to maintain steady employment, indicating a lack of sound judgment. They were using the job I lost at Larkspur. The failure they had quarantined me for was now evidence for their case. They were seeking to have me declared incompetent and to have my father, Frank Reyes, appointed as guardian of my estate, my $70 million estate. I put the papers in a clear plastic sleeve. I scanned them. I emailed the PDF to Gideon and Ms. Dalrymple. Gideon called me. The calm was gone from his voice. It was replaced by a cold, controlled fury. "They've done it," he said. "They have officially declared war. This is no longer a family dispute. Mila, this is a hostile takeover attempt. They are petitioning the court. They can't win. Can they?" My voice was steady. The paper felt like a relic from a different, stupider world. "No, this petition is garbage. It's built on jealousy and hearsay. Ms. Dalrymple will have it thrown out before they even get a hearing. But that is not the point. The point is, they will not stop. They have filed. They will go to the press. They will leak this. They will paint you as the crazy, unstable heiress, and them as the concerned, loving family. They will make your life a living hell, right on your beautiful front porch." He paused. "You're in a glass fortress. Mila, everyone can see in. So what do? You vanish," he said, his voice final. "This was a good place to land, but it's not a place to stay. You are a $70 million target. It is time to disappear. Leave the state. Go somewhere they would never think to look. And the house? We sell the house, quietly, off-market. I will not use Anya. I will use a different agent, a ghost from a commercial firm. We'll transfer the property into a holding LLC, and it will be sold by an anonymous trust. By the time they figure out you've left, the house will belong to someone else. You will cut the last string that ties you to them." I looked out the glass wall. The view of the Hudson was magnificent, but Gideon was right. It was a target. "Where?" I asked. I thought of Ohio. Gray, wet, cold. I thought of New York. Visible, loud. I wanted the opposite. I wanted dry. I wanted quiet. I wanted sun. "Santa Fe," I said. "New Mexico." "Good," Gideon said. "The high desert? Anonymous. Different. I'll have Anya find you a fortress, not a fishbowl." Anya Locke was a miracle of efficiency. She understood discreet in a way I was only beginning to. "Not the historic district," she'd said. "Too many tourists. Too visible. I have a place in Coyote Ridge. It's an older community. High desert. The houses are adobe. They are built to look like the earth. They are invisible until you're at the front door." I bought it based on a 15-minute video tour. It was not glass and steel. It was earth. Thick, plaster walls, deep-set windows, wooden beams called vigas. It had a courtyard in the center, shielded from the world. It was a house that looked inward. We moved in 2 weeks. The move was a masterwork of logistics. It was not a move. It was an extraction. The team arrived at 10 o'clock at night, a private, unmarked logistics company that specialized in moving fine art. I did not take the furniture, the cold, staged, beautiful furniture stayed. That would be sold with the house. I took my clothes, my books, the heavy black pen I'd used to make my list, and the lottery ticket, now in a simple, UV-protected frame. My silver coupe was loaded into an enclosed and unmarked trailer at midnight. I walked out of the Hudson Bluffs house at 2 a.m, carrying a single suitcase. I got into the back of a black sedan, and it drove me to a private airfield. When the sun rose over Hudson Bluffs, the only sign I had ever been there was a discreet "for sale" sign at the bottom of the long drive, planted by an agent from a firm no one had heard of. The sign said, "Appointments by referral only." By the time I landed in Santa Fe, my old life was gone. I had a new phone, a new number, a secure, encrypted device, my old social media. The Instagram, the LinkedIn, the Facebook was not just deactivated, it was erased. Gideon had hired a specialist, a man named Rafe Nolan, whose entire job was digital identity management, a polite term for a digital ghostmaker. He scrubbed my name from public-facing databases. He found an old MySpace profile, a live journal from college. He burned them all. "You are now Mila Ellery," he'd said. "The woman who lived in Ohio named Mila Reyes. She's a ghost." I kept one link, one single, fragile thread. My Aunt June, June Merrick, my mother's older sister, the flighty black sheep in Minneapolis, the only one who had ever sent me a card for a promotion. I called her from my new, secure line. "Aunt June, it's Mila," she gasped. "Mila. My goodness, I've been hearing. Your mother has been calling. She's been saying the most wild things, that you're unwell, that you've been taken advantage of." "Aunt June," I said, "what I am about to tell you cannot leave this phone call." I told her everything, the ticket, the trust, the family meeting, the guardianship petition. She was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was shaking. "Helena, that is my sister. That is who she is. I am so sorry, child. I am so sorry she put you through that." "I need one person," I said, my voice thick. "I just need one person to know I'm okay." "I will not say a word," she swore. "To anyone. Your secret is safe with me. You build your life. Mila, you build it strong." The last pieces fell into place. Gideon and Ms. Dalrymple restructured everything. My assets were moved from the original Maple and Third Trust, which my family now knew the name of, into a new, ironclad, irrevocable trust. Legally, I no longer owned the money. The trust did. I was a beneficiary. but I could not be forced to dissolve it. We set up 3 new shell LLCs, registered in Delaware. One owned the Santa Fe house, one owned my car. The third, Stepstone Holdings, was the one that received my salary from the trust and the beneficiaries. If I died, not June, that would put a target on her. We named a national charity. If your family did manage to challenge your will, Ms. Dalrymple said, they would find they are fighting a billion-dollar legal team. They would be obliterated. It was done. I sat in my new house, the house of earth. The walls were thick and curved, painted a soft white. The air smelled of dust and dry pine. I walked into the central courtyard. It was night, in Hudson Bluffs. I could see the glow of New York City. Here, there was nothing, just blackness, a perfect, absolute, velvet black, punctured by a spray of stars so bright, so numerous, it looked like a tear in the sky. I sat on the cool terracotta tiles. I breathed in the cold, dry, desert air. My breathing, which had been shallow and tight for 6 months, finally evened out. The knot in my chest, the one I had carried for so long I thought it was a part of me, just dissolved. I was alone. I was anonymous. I was safe. It was a new beginning. The silence of the high desert was a new kind of wealth. In my adobe house, the thick walls did not just block the sound, they seemed to absorb it. For the first month, I did nothing. I watched the quality of light change against the plaster walls. I learned the names of the strange, beautiful, spiky plants in my courtyard. I read. I slept. I let the $70 million engine of my life idle down to a quiet hum. But the hum was still there. Gideon provided quarterly reports, and the numbers were staggering. The investments, managed by his team, were generating income. The money was making more money. The fortress was secure. But a fortress, I realized, is just a very beautiful prison if you never leave it. I was not a failure. I was not a victim. I was not just a survivor. I was an analyst with a massive amount of capital. It was time to put the capital to work. I called Gideon. I'm starting a foundation, I said. I've been wondering when you'd call about this, he replied. Do you have a name? The Stepstone Foundation. A step up, a step onto a new path. Good, clean, and the public-facing principle. Mila Ellery, I said, my middle name, and my mother's maiden name, a name that was mine, but that held no connection to the Reyes family, a ghost identity. Mila Ellery of the Stepstone Foundation, he said, testing the words. It works. I'll have Dalrymple file the nonprofit paperwork. This isn't just for tax purposes. Gideon. I know, he said. This is the what next. So, what is next? Who are you giving it to? I'm giving it to the people who are one bad day away from disaster. I said, I'm giving it to the person I was, and the people my family refused to see. I spent the next 2 weeks in my strategy room, the library, mapping it out just as I would have a project at Larkspur. This was not a slush fund, it was an operation. The mission was precise. Target 1. The recently unemployed, people like me, cast aside by corporate restructuring, who needed a bridge, not a handout. Target 2 single mothers, a group my mother had always spoken of with a particular, venomous pity. Target 3 students facing a financial gap, the last few $1,000s that kept them from graduating. Target 4 families on the absolute brink of eviction, the ones with a notice taped to their door. This was not charity, it was intervention. I did not try to run it myself. That was the mistake of a vanity project. I was the CEO. I needed a team. I hired a small, fiercely professional group, a former social worker with 20 years of field experience named Grace, who would serve as the director of operations, and 2 forensic accountants whose entire job was to vet every single application for legitimacy. I wrote the criteria myself. We were not a faceless bank. We would be fast. We would be quiet. We would be unbureaucratic. A 1-page application, a 48-hour review. But I added one final, private step. For the large grants, the evictions, the tuitions, the final approval was mine. I would meet them, under the guise of Mila Ellery, a foundation director. I would sit in the small, clean office we rented in a nondescript building downtown. I wouldn't just sign the checks. I would listen to the stories. I remembered sitting at my parents' dinner table, my failure so contagious they left 2 empty chairs. My new job was to fill those chairs. The first woman I met was a nurse. A single mother of 2 whose ex-husband had stopped paying child support, right as her car's transmission died. She had been taking the bus, adding 3 hours to her commute, and she had just been fired for being late. She was 2 weeks from being evicted. She sat across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. She was not crying. She was just hollowed out. She was terrified. "I just need a bridge," she whispered. I'm not lazy. I have a new job lined up, but I can't start for 3 weeks. And the landlord, he won't wait." She had her paperwork, the lease, the termination letter, the new job offer. "What's your new commute?" I asked. It's a crosstown bus. 2 transfers." I looked at her file. "You need a bridge," I said, "and you also need a car." We paid her back rent, we paid her next month's rent, and we gave her a grant for $5,000 to buy a reliable, used vehicle. Her face. She did not shriek. She just started to silently weep, the hollow look replaced by a profound, shuddering shock. I didn't hug her. I didn't pat her hand. I just pushed a box of tissues across the desk. "Grace will handle the wire transfer," I said. "It will be in your account this afternoon. Good luck at the new job." That was the work. I built a wall of anonymity. My old, erased digital life was replaced by a sterile, professional one. The Stepstone Foundation had a website. It was clean, functional, and told you nothing about its founder. It had a board made up of my lawyer, my wealth manager, and a local community leader. Mila Ellery had no digital footprint, no Instagram, no Facebook. The money flowed from the irrevocable trust to the foundation, a clean, legal, invisible river. The first 6 months were a blur. I was working harder than I ever had at Larkspur. I was in the office by 7, reading applications. I was meeting with community leaders. I was listening. At the 6-month mark, Grace put the report on my desk. 40 individual scholarships, ranging from $500 for textbooks to a full ride for a semester, had been paid. 25 families, with eviction notices in their hands, were still in their homes. 100 men and women had been enrolled in a vocational retraining program we had set up with the local community college. Their tuition fully funded. The numbers were clean. The impact was real. We held a small event, not a gala. We called it a Community Partners Evening. It was in the community college's modest atrium. We served wine in plastic cups and had cheese and crackers. The guests were not billionaires. They were people like Dr. Laird, the head of the community college, a sharp woman with a passion for adult education. There were a few young, local entrepreneurs. A man named Rowan Keats introduced himself. He was in his 40s, with a shock of gray hair and an intense, focused energy. He had founded a small, successful software company. He was not a love interest. He was a potential partner. "Mila Ellery," he said, shaking my hand. "Your vocational program. It's smart. My company is desperate for coders. These boot camps, they're not always the answer. Your model is better. We're having some success," I said. "I want in," he said, with the bluntness of a man who builds things. "I want to co-fund the next cohort. I'll double whatever you're putting in, and I'll guarantee an interview for any graduate who passes." My old self, the Larkspur self, would have been flattered, would have gushed. The new Mila, the Stepstone CEO, just nodded. "That's an excellent proposal. Rowan, have your people send it in writing to my operations director. Grace, we'll review the terms." He smiled. He respected the boundary. "Will do." The local paper, the Santa Fe Chronicle, sent a reporter. She was young, ambitious, and she smelled a story. "This foundation," she said, cornering me by the cheese plate. "It just appeared, and it's doing real work, but no one's heard of you. Who are you? Mila Ellery. Where did this money come from? I looked at her. I saw myself, in a way, the analyst, digging for the truth. I gave her a small, tight smile. I'm not the story. The foundation is not the story. I pointed across the room, to the nurse I had met 6 months ago. She was not hollowed out anymore. She was laughing with Dr. Laird. She was now a shift supervisor. She's the story, I said. Go talk to her. Go talk to the 25 families who are sleeping in their own beds tonight. Go talk to the graduates of our program. They're the only quote you need. I walked away, leaving her to it. The next week, I signed a formal memorandum of understanding with the Sand Mesa Technical Institute, the one Dr. Laird ran. The Rowan Keats Stepstone Partnership was official, formalized in a 10-page legal document. Gideon's quarterly update arrived in my secure inbox. The trust's investments were performing well. The income was stable. The foundation was funded for the next 50 years, even if we never took another donation. I sat in my library, the strategy room, and I looked at the numbers, not the financial numbers, the impact numbers, 40, 25, 100. I finally understood. My family's mistake was thinking money was a thing, something to be hoarded, to be fought over, to be used as a weapon, to be counted. They were wrong. Money is not a thing. Money is a process. It is a tool. It is an engine. Giving it away was not a noble, emotional act. It was a project. It was the most serious, complex, and satisfying project I had ever managed. I walked out into my courtyard. The sun was setting, bleeding a deep, impossible red and purple across the vast desert sky. The Santa Fe twilight, the locals called it. I smiled. It was the first smile I could remember that was not tight, that was not a secret, that was not a performance. There was no shadow cast over it, not from my job, not from my past, and not from a single person who shared my last name. My life, finally, was finding its own rhythm. The Stepstone Foundation grew. A year passed. The work became my life, and my life, for the first time, felt structured and meaningful. We held our second Community Partners Evening, and this time, it was not in the college atrium. We'd had a good year, and we rented out a small, beautiful event space in a restored historic building. There was still cheese, but it was on wooden boards, and the wine was in actual glass. Rowan Keats was there, and he brought a few people from his tech network. Dr. Laird was our guest of honor. We were celebrating the first graduating class of our vocational program. I was not networking. I was listening to Dr. Laird described the success of one of our graduates when a man I hadn't seen before approached our small circle. He was tall, quiet, and he looked solid, like he was part of the landscape. He wore a simple linen shirt and had paint, or maybe plaster, on his hands, as if he'd come straight from a job site. Dr. Laird turned, her face lighting up. Elliot, you made it? I wouldn't miss it, Doctor, he said. His voice was deep and very calm. Mila Ellery. Dr. Laird said, pulling me in. This is Elliot Vance. He's the man who's been doing the pro bono restoration work on the new wing for our culinary students. Elliot, Mila is our founder. Elliot looked at me. His eyes were clear, and he wasn't smiling a polite, social smile. He was just looking, assessing. Ellery, he said. The architect. I'm sorry? I asked. The foundation, the way it's structured, it's built. You're not just throwing money at things. You're building infrastructure. It's an architect's approach. I was so taken aback by the observation that I almost forgot to be polite. Thank you. I used to be an analyst. Same thing, he said, with a small nod. You look for the load-bearing walls. Dr. Laird tells me you're expanding the mission. You're looking into transitional housing. We're in the early stages, I said, my guard reflexively up. Just a feasibility study. We're helping a family that just came out of eviction. Elliot said, his gaze shifting to the room, but still including me. The foundation paid their deposit. It was a lifesaver. But the apartment they're in, it's a box. It's got no light. The kitchen is tiny. You can't heal in a place that's built to be unlived in. He was talking about the family, the nurse. He knew the case. We've been talking about communal spaces, I said, finding myself drawn into a conversation I'd only had with Grace. A shared kitchen, a safe place for the kids to do homework, a healing space, as you said. Exactly, he said, his eyes lighting up. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke about this, the energy was there. A communal kitchen isn't just about saving money, it's about not being alone. It's about a mother being able to watch her child while she cooks and talk to another adult. He was an architect who restored old adobe houses. He was there as an in-kind sponsor, having donated leftover materials, bricks, tile, wood to the college's new wing. He did not ask me where I lived. He did not ask me what I drove. He did not ask me a single personal question. He looked at the plans Dr. Laird was holding for the new vocational center. You're going to need a lot of brick, he said. The sound insulation. These old walls are thick, but the acoustics are bad. What kind of brick are you using for the new partitions in the training center? The conversation lasted for an hour. We talked about light. We talked about acoustics. We talked about the psychology of space. When he left, he shook my hand. It was good to meet you, Mila. I'll send Grace a note about a supplier I know. He might be able to give us a deal on that brick. Our next meeting was at a coffee shop. It was not a date. I had called him. I wanted his professional opinion on a building the foundation was considering leasing. He brought a small, rolled-up set of blueprints. It's a bad lease, he said, after I described it. The plumbing is shot, and the landlord knows it. He's trying to get a nonprofit in so you'll pay for the upgrades. He had saved us, by my estimate, at least $50,000. Thank you, I said. I owe you one. No, you don't. It's good work. Now, tell me about this communal kitchen idea again. I have a sketch. The coffee meetings became regular. They were work, but they were also not. We talked about adobe, the way the earth holds the heat of the day and releases it at night. We talked about why Santa Fe felt different from other places. It's the walls, he said one afternoon. We were at a tiny cafe, and the sun was hitting the yellow plaster wall across the street. People think they're for decoration. They're not. They're 3 feet thick. They're a boundary, a real one. One Saturday, he asked me to go for a walk. Not a hike, a walk, down Canyon Road. I don't look at the art, he confessed. As we walked past a gallery full of bright, expensive paintings, I look at the buildings, the old adobes. Look at this one. He stopped. He put his hand on a low, curving wall. It was lumpy, imperfect. This is a real one, he said. It's old. You can feel the history in it, the hands that built it. We stood there, just looking at a wall, and it wasn't boring. I used to live in a glass house, I said. The words just came out. He looked at me. His face was calm, unprying. He just waited. It was in New York, I said. For a little while, I had a very loud family, from Ohio, very loud, and very close. Too close. It was the most I had told anyone, besides Gideon and June. Elliot nodded. He kept his hand on the adobe wall. We build thick walls here, he said, his voice quiet. People from the coast, they think it's about hiding, that it's unfriendly. They don't get it. He looked back at me. We don't build them to hide. We build them to stay warm. We build them so we can choose who we let in. I didn't have to say anything else. He understood. He was a man who understood boundaries. He understood the difference between a fortress and a sanctuary. We kept our lives private. It was an unspoken, immediate agreement. He had his own life, his own quiet reputation. I had mine. There were no pictures of us on social media. My digital ghost status remained. His was just minimal, We existed in the real world, not on a screen. We ate dinner in my courtyard. We worked, side by side, at his drafting table. It was slow, it was solid, it was real. One night, 6 months after the walk on Canyon Road, we were in my kitchen. I was cooking. He was sitting at the table, sketching on a napkin a new plan for the Stepstone Center's courtyard. "You know," he said, not looking up from his sketch, "this house is good. It's solid. But my house, it has a better view of the mountains, and my kitchen is bigger." I stopped chopping. I thought your kitchen was tiny." "It is," he said, "which is why I'm planning a renovation. I'm going to knock out the south wall." He finally looked up. He put the pencil down. "The thing is," he said, "I don't want to design it alone. I think we should build the next part together." There was no ring. He was not on one knee. There were no fireworks. It was an offer. It was a proposal for a joint project. "Elliot," I said, my voice a little shaky, Are you asking me to move in, or are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes," he said. "I think both, in that order. We should build together." I put the knife down. "Yes," I said. "But," he didn't flinch. But there is a document," I said. "A legal one. My finances. They are complicated. I am protected by a series of trusts, and I will not undo that. For anyone." "Of course," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "A prenuptial agreement." "A very specific one," I said, my CEO voice coming back. "A two-way, fully transparent agreement. I want your assets protected from me, just as much as mine are protected from you. I want Ms. Dalrymple to talk to your lawyer. I want everything on the table." He smiled, a real warm smile. "A transparent legal framework. That sounds incredibly romantic." And the thing was, it was the most romantic thing he could have said. He was not afraid of my boundaries. He was not trying to get inside my fortress. He was offering to help me build a new, shared wing. "I'll have her draft it," I said. Aunt June flew down from Minneapolis. It was the first time she had seen me since I'd left Ohio. She stayed in my guest house, and I watched her and Elliot talk about soil drainage for the garden. "He's a good man, Mila," she told me, that evening, as we sat in the courtyard. "He's not a talker, is he? He's a doer. Your mother. She always went for the talkers." She held my hand. Her hand was warm, a little frail. "I saw the agreement, Mila," she said. "Gideon told me about it. It's quite the document." "It's necessary, June." "I know," she said, and she squeezed my hand. "What I love is that you're choosing this. You are not running to him. You are not begging for him. You are two whole people, deciding to stand together. That's a rare, beautiful thing." The wedding was small, 20 people. It was in my courtyard. Under the dark desert sky, Dr. Laird was there. Grace, from the foundation, was there. Rowan Keats was there. A few of Elliot's quiet, solid friends. And Aunt June, there was no one with the last name Reyes. We strung paper lanterns between the vigas. We had a guitar player, a friend of Elliot's. We had food from a local caterer. We said our vows. They were not about forever. They were about today. They were about partnership, respect, and building. The Stepstone Foundation, soon after, received a new, anonymous donation, a significant one. It was from a new LLC, funded by a network of sustainable architects that Elliot had brought together. I learned how to be happy, not in a giddy, loud, performative way, but in a quiet, solid, foundational way. I was learning to be happy, and I was not asking anyone's permission. The door to my past was still closed. It was locked. It was deadbolted. But the handle on this side of the door, it had changed. It was no longer the cold, steel lever of a vault. It felt like warm, worn wood. My life with Elliot was an act of construction. We were building a home, blending our lives with the slow, deliberate care of a master artisan. The Stepstone Foundation was building too, not just funding projects, but creating a stable, load-bearing structure for the community. My world was no longer the glass box of Hudson Bluffs, all sharp angles and visibility. It was the solid, curved, protective earth of an adobe wall. It was real. But the past is not a separate room you can just lock and leave. It is a root system, and the roots of the Reyes family, I was about to be reminded, were invasive and toxic. The first tremor came from the only thread I had not cut Aunt June. She called me 6 months into my marriage, her voice on my secure line tight with a reluctance I knew well. "Mila," she began, "I know you are happy. I know you've earned this peace, but I need to tell you what's being said." "Said by who?" "June," I asked, looking out at the quiet, sun-drenched courtyard Elliot and I had just planted with lavender. "Helena, your mother, she's on a campaign. She's telling every cousin, every old neighbor, anyone who will listen, that you betrayed the family, that you stole their inheritance and abandoned them all." I sighed. The old familiar ache. "That's her story. June. She can tell it. It doesn't change anything here." "It's not just her," June said, and her voice dropped. "It's Brielle, and her story is worse. She's not telling people you're cruel, Mila. She's telling them you are unstable." I felt a cold prickle. Unstable. Yes, that you were always erratic, that this money just broke your mind, and this is the part you need to hear. Honey, she's telling people the money is almost gone, that you've burned through all of it on houses and cars, that you're broke, and you're going to come crawling back to them any day, and they are so worried about what will happen to you then. Brielle's narrative was the more dangerous of the two. It was not just petty gossip. It was strategic. It was an arrow, fletched and aimed. It took 2 weeks for that arrow to land. Grace, my foundation director, came into my office and quietly closed the door. She looked physically ill. "Mila," she said, her voice low. "There is a local blog, a Santa Fe gossip site. Someone sent it to me." She slid her tablet across my desk. The headline was garish and cruel. "Santa Fe's angel founder is the Stepstone Foundation built on stolen money and a mental breakdown." The article was a masterpiece of innuendo and anonymous sourcing, a source close to the family in Ohio. Another source, concerned for the founder's well-being, states she is unstable and has burned through a massive windfall. It questioned the long-term solvency of the foundation. It mentioned Mila Ellery. "I've had 3 calls this morning," Grace said, her hands clasped tightly. "One from Rowan Keats. They're not pulling support, but they're asking questions. They're worried." I was on a secure video conference with Ms. Dalrymple within 5 minutes. Her face, when I told her, was a mask of cold, controlled fury. "Do not," she ordered, "say a single word. You will not respond to the press. You will not issue a statement. You will not even say, 'No comment.' This is not a public relations battle. This is the legal prelude. They are seeding the ground. Seeding it for what they're in Ohio. They can't touch me." "They are seeding it for the guardianship filing," Dalrymple said, her words like steel chips. "Brielle's narrative is not for the family. It is for a judge. She is unstable. She is financially irresponsible. The money is gone. They are building the case that you are a danger to your own estate." "But that's insane," I said. "We have the irrevocable trust. We have the competency reports." "Yes," Dalrymple said, "and they have just given us the motive. I would bet my license they are filing, right now, in their home county. They are going to try." She was right. The official summons arrived at her office 3 days later, a courier-delivered packet from a small county court in Ohio. Petition for emergency ex parte. Guardianship and conservatorship. It was the same document I had seen a draft of on my doorstep in Hudson Bluffs. But now, it was real. It was filed, and the evidence they had attached. I laughed. It was a cold, bitter laugh. But I laughed. It was a stack of printer paper, printouts of my mother's Facebook posts. For the last 6 months, Helena had been writing a public diary of her grief, painting herself as the long-suffering, victimized mother of a troubled and lost daughter. Our hearts are broken as we watch our beloved child spiral. We just want her to be safe and get the help she needs. They were using my mother's manufactured, public-facing, social media grief as Exhibit A. This, Ms. Dalrymple said on the phone, her voice humming with professional satisfaction, is a gift. They are greedy, sloppy amateurs. They've filed in the wrong state, based on evidence a child could dismantle, against a person who is legally a ghost. This is beautiful. She immediately filed 2 motions. The first, a motion to dismiss, based on a total lack of jurisdiction, complete with my New Mexico driver's license, my marriage certificate, my tax returns, and my voter registration. The second, a motion to change venue to Santa Fe, if the claimants were foolish enough to want to proceed. And now, she said, while they are off balance and their Ohio lawyer is realizing he's been had, you are going to set the trap. A trap, I said. I was not a trapper. I was a builder. Yes, you are going to invite them to a meeting. You are going to mollify them. I am not seeing them, I said. The words were a flat wall. Oh, yes, you are, she countered. But not as Mila Reyes, the daughter. You are meeting them as Mila Ellery, the head of the Stepstone Foundation. You are, on my advice, offering them a final asset reconciliation meeting to discuss their claims. I hated it. Gideon said to never engage. Gideon is a wealth manager. I am a litigator. We are no longer protecting assets. Mila, we are collecting evidence for a countersuit. My team will draft the invitation. It will be on my letterhead. The letter was a work of art. It was cold, corporate, and dense with legal jargon. It invited the Reyes claimants to a structured discussion to clarify the future intentions of the trust they had named. It offered to discuss a potential one-time good-faith disbursement to settle all future claims. It was bait, a big, fat, juicy piece of bait. But the kill switch was in the 4th paragraph. All attendees must consent to the meeting being fully recorded by audio and visual means. This is a non-negotiable condition from our legal team for the purposes of regulatory compliance and accurate record-keeping. They will never sign that, I said. Mila, Dalrymple said. They are greedy. They are not smart. They will read disbursement as check. They will sign anything. She was right. They all signed. They waived their rights. They agreed to be recorded. A week later, they flew to Santa Fe. I did not meet them at my home. I did not meet them at the foundation. I met them in the sterile, neutral ground conference room of Miss Dalrymple's Santa Fe law firm. I was there first. Seated at the head of a long, polished table, Ms. Dalrymple was at my right, at the door. A quiet, broad-shouldered man in a suit stood at ease. Mr. Evans, from our security and compliance team. His lapel pin was a high-definition body cam. The small black dome in the ceiling was the room's main camera. The sleek black box on the table was a conference speaker and a high-fidelity audio recorder. They were buzzed in. They looked triumphant. They were flushed with the dry desert air and the smell of victory. They thought my letter was a white flag, a surrender. They thought their Facebook posts and the tabloid blog had backed me into a corner. Mila, my mother cried, her voice dripping with a false, saccharine sympathy. She rushed forward, her arms open. I did not stand. I simply put up a hand. Please, sit. This is a business meeting. You know Ms. Dalrymple. The hug died in the air. Her face hardened. They sat, a united front, across the table. They looked at the empty table, at the single pitcher of water. Well, Brielle said, her voice sharp. She was the analyst. She was taking charge. We're glad you finally saw reason. This stepstone thing is a nice hobby, but we need to discuss the family's allocation. Before we begin, Colton said, and he actually smiled. We put together a little something To make it easy for everyone. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. He slid it across the polished wood. Ms. Dalrymple picked it up. She unfolded it. She looked at it. Her face remained perfectly, professionally blank. "This is a table of expected distribution," she said. "Just a wish list," Colton said, trying to sound casual, but he was proud of it. Dalrymple passed it to me. It was a spreadsheet. Brielle Reyes mortgage payoff, $241,000 plus $500. $1,000 liquidity. Colton Reyes Children's College Fund, $100,000 plus $500,000 liquidity. Helena Frank Reyes New Residence Esti, $400,000 plus $1,000. Annuity trust. At the bottom, under a line titled Agreed, were the pre-written signatures of my mother and my father. They had signed their demand sheet. "We're just trying to protect you, Mila," my father said, his voice a low rumble. "This is family money." "Exactly," Brielle snapped, leaning forward. "And frankly, we're tired of waiting. We're here in good faith. We flew all the way out here. We signed your ridiculous paper. We'd like to see your good faith. We need an advance. Today, before we leave." "An advance," I repeated. $50,000, she said. "Each, for our trouble, for the legal fees we've already had, to show you're serious about reconciliation." "So," Ms. Dalrymple cut in, her voice smooth as silk, "you are requesting a payment of $200,000 today in exchange for what?" "For not taking this further," my mother burst out, her mask of concern shattering. "For not going back to the judge in Ohio, we are saving you. And you are being so incredibly difficult." "Speaking of your legal filings, Mrs. Reyes," Dalrymple said, turning to her, "I was fascinated by your diligence. Your daughter's former residence in Hudson Bluffs. It was held in a blind trust. It was an unlisted sale. How, exactly, did you find that address?" Helena looked at Brielle. Brielle looked down at the table. "We're family," Helena said, puffing herself up. "We have our ways. Please, be specific, Mrs. Reyes," Dalrymple said. "It's for our compliance records." Helena smiled, a small, proud, bitter smile. "Brielle's boyfriend. He still has friends at the county registrar's office. He made a call. For family. They just looked up the trust filings." The blood drained from my face. Ms. Dalrymple, however, just wrote it down. "So, you are confirming, on the record, that you and Ms. Brielle Reyes conspired to use a personal contact to gain illegal, unauthorized access to sealed, protected county data." Helwena's smile faltered. It's not illegal if it's for family. We were worried." Ms. Dalrymple did not look at her. She looked at Mr. Evans, the man by the door. He gave a single, slow nod. His body cam had captured it all. "I think we're done here," Dalrymple said. She stood up. They were baffled. "But the distribution," Colton said, pointing at his spreadsheet. "The advance." "There will be no distribution," I said, and I stood up, too. "There will be no advance. This meeting was a courtesy, and you have provided us with everything we need." We walked out. We left them in the conference room, in the elevator. The silence was absolute. "Well," Dalrymple said as the doors opened on the lobby, "that was productive." "What now?" I asked. "Now I have a signed, premeditated demand for millions. I have a recorded extortion attempt for $200,000, and I have, on camera, a confession from your mother to a felony violation of data privacy laws, implicating your sister. I have everything I need to file for a permanent protective order. I have the grounds for a civil countersuit for malicious prosecution and abusive litigation, and I am ethically bound to turn over the evidence of the data breach to the New York Attorney General." My heart was not pounding. It was steady. It was calm. It was the cold, clean calm of a project 8 months in the planning reaching its final successful milestone. "The Ohio hearing is still on the docket," I said. "Yes, Dalrymple said. "We will let them fly home. We will let them wait by the phone for a wire transfer that will never come. And then, tomorrow morning, we will file. The reconciliation is over. The real hearing is about to begin." The Santa Fe courtroom was nothing like the ones on television. It was small, modern, and the walls were a calming shade of desert tan. It was also, as of this morning, the new jurisdiction for my family's legal war. Their Ohio lawyer, having been humiliated by Ms. Dalrymple's motion to dismiss, had officially withdrawn, but they had found a local Santa Fe lawyer, a man with a hungry look and a cheap suit, who had immediately refiled the petition for temporary guardianship. Here, in the correct jurisdiction, they were not giving up. They were just relocating the assault. I sat next to Ms. Dalrymple at the defendant's table. Elliot was in the front row, directly behind me. He was not there as a husband. He was there as a founder, a partner, a quiet, solid presence, the Reyes family. Helena, Frank, Brielle, and Colton sat across the aisle. They looked diminished. The high-altitude sun did not agree with them. They looked pale and angry. "Your Honor," their new lawyer began, his voice booming in the small room. "We are here today on a simple, tragic matter. My clients, the loving family of Mila Reyes, are petitioning for a temporary emergency guardianship. We have proof that Ms. Reyes is a danger to her own estate. She is mentally unstable and financially out of control." He motioned to a board. On it were two large, glossy photographs. The first was of my silver coupe. The second was of the Hudson Bluffs house, its glass walls gleaming. "This," the lawyer said, pointing dramatically, "is the behavior of a person who has lost their grip on reality, wasting millions on cars and houses, just weeks after a reported mental breakdown following her termination from her job. We are asking the court to step in, to appoint a guardian, her father, Mr. Frank Reyes, to protect what little is left of this tragic windfall." The judge, a sharp woman in her 60s, looked at the photos with a bored expression. She then looked at Ms. Dalrymple. "Counselor, your response." Ms. Dalrymple stood. She was not dramatic. She was a surgeon. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and precise. "My client, Ms. Mila Ellery, who is legally married under that name, is one of the most financially sound individuals in this state. The petitioners have built their case on Facebook posts and tabloid gossip. I have built mine on certified facts." She handed a file to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "First," Dalrymple said, "you will find a full competency report from Dr. Alistair Cohen, a court-certified, independent psychiatric evaluator, confirming Ms. Ellery's more than sound state of mind. Second, you will find a full financial audit from her wealth manager, Mr. Gideon Price, confirming the health of her irrevocable trust. You will note, Your Honor, that my client's total personal expenditures, including all assets, account for less than 2% of the trust's annual earnings. She is not, as counsel claims, burning through her money. She is, in fact, more financially responsible than 99% of the population." The judge's eyebrows went up as she scanned the report. "But this," Ms. Dalrymple said, "is not really about concern, is it? This is about an attempted extortion." "Objection," the other lawyer yelled. "Overruled," the judge said, her eyes now fixed on Dalrymple. "I'll allow it, but you had better be going somewhere." "Counselor." "I am, Your Honor." "The petitioners claim they are a loving, concerned family. We have evidence, gathered under a legally signed consent waiver, that proves otherwise." Ms. Dalrymple nodded to her assistant. A large screen was turned to face the judge. "This," Dalrymple said, "is a video recording of a reconciliation meeting my client held with the petitioners 2 weeks ago, a meeting they agreed to have recorded." The video played. The sound was perfect. The conference room. I watched my family, on screen, divide my life. We saw Colton slide his table of expected distribution across the table. We saw Brielle, her face hard, demanding an advance of $50,000 each. "For our trouble," We saw Helena, her eyes blazing, confirmed their intent was to control the money. The Reyes lawyer, the man with the cheap suit, was now as pale as his clients. And finally, Dalrymple said, we have this. A recording of a phone call, made after my client informed her family of her intent to donate her funds to charity. This recording, we submit, proves this petition was not an act of concern, but an act of premeditated, malicious litigation. The audio played. My father's roar. That is our money. And then, Colton's voice, cold and analytical. We file for an emergency psychiatric evaluation. We file for incompetence. We get a judge to declare her incapable. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at the Reyes family. They looked like they had been turned to stone. Your Honor, their lawyer stammered. My clients, they were emotional. Counselor, the judge said, her voice like ice. Be quiet. Ms. Dalrymple, you mentioned a $2.5 million house in Hudson Bluffs, New York. How did your client's family, who live on a hardware store income in Ohio, find an unlisted, private trust property in New York? Ms. Dalrymple looked at her notes. I believe the petitioner, Mrs. Helena Reyes, can answer that. She confessed during the meeting. The judge's gaze swiveled to my mother. Mrs. Reyes, answer the question. How did you find that address? Helena was shaking. We were worried. It was just family. Brielle's boyfriend. He has friends. At the county. The registrar's office. The judge's pen snapped. So you admit, in open court, to conspiring to gain illegal access to sealed, protected data. Helena's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Your Honor, Ms. Dalrymple said, standing again. The petitioner's entire case is based on lies, gossip, and evidence obtained through a felony. In light of this, we are filing an immediate countersuit. She placed a new thick file on the table. We seek a permanent, 500-yard restraining order against all four claimants, barring them from contacting my client, her husband, or any employee of the Stepstone Foundation. We seek full sanctions for this malicious and abusive litigation, and we are, as of this morning, turning over the full, unredacted evidence of the data breach to the New York State Attorney General for criminal prosecution. The hammer had fallen. The judge did not hesitate. The petition for guardianship is dismissed, with prejudice, meaning it can never be refiled. All legal fees and sanctions will be borne by the petitioners. The permanent protective order is granted, effective immediately. This court is now in recess. It was over. Helena finally made a sound. It was not a cry of remorse. It was a low, animal wail of loss. Brielle just stared at the wall. Colton was muttering, This isn't justice. This isn't right. Wait, Ms. Dalrymple said, her voice stopping the judge. We have 3 final items for the record. The judge, intrigued, sat back down. First, Your Honor, my client has been accused of abandoning her hometown. While she has no desire to fund her family, she has not forgotten her community. She handed an envelope to the clerk. This is a binding, 4-year commitment to fund the Ridgedale Public Scholarship Fund. A gift made in honor of anonymous kindness. My client believes in helping children, just not through greedy gatekeepers. The judge nodded, impressed. Second, Dalrymple said, my client's husband, Mr. Elliot Vance, has a brief statement. Elliot stood. He did not look at the Reyes family. He looked at the judge. Your Honor, in recognition of the only member of my wife's family who ever showed her kindness, my own family trust is endowing a new wing at the San Mesa Technical Institute. It will be called the June Merrick Center for Vocational Studies. He looked at me. I was crying, quietly. And third, Ms. Dalrymple said, her voice cutting through the emotion. The petitioners have based their entire case for financial irresponsibility on the purchase of the Hudson Bluffs house. They have, in fact, made noise about seizing it. She placed one last document on the table. This is the final transfer deed for that property. My client sold that house, at a profit, 1 month ago. The funds are, and have always been, secure within the irrevocable trust. That was the final, fatal blow. The last-ditch hope that they could somehow lay claim to that asset evaporated. My mother's wail became a sob. Brielle stood up, her face gray, and walked out of the courtroom. As I stood to leave, my father looked at me. His eyes were not sad. They were just empty. I looked back at him. "Family," I said, my voice just loud enough for him to hear, "is not a pair of handcuffs." Then I turned, and I walked out. The press was waiting, a small gaggle of local reporters, alerted by the gossip blog. "Mila, is it true? What will you say to your family?" I said nothing. I just looked at them. Elliot took my hand. Ms. Dalrymple stepped in front of the cameras, a shark in her natural element. "My client has no comment," she said, her voice projecting. "My client, Mila Ellery, has been the victim of a malicious, abusive litigation attempt. We are confident the state of New York will pursue the related criminal charges. My client looks forward to continuing her award-winning philanthropic work. Free from harassment. We are done here." That night, Elliot and I did not go to a restaurant. We sat in our courtyard. The adobe walls were warm from the day's sun. The sky was a deep, velvet black, splashed with stars. Elliot put a blanket over my shoulders. He just sat with me, his presence solid, and he said nothing. He just let me be. My new, secure phone chimed. It was an email from Grace, at the Stepstone Foundation. Subject: "We did it, Mila. Just wanted you to be the first to know." The first 10 students for the June Merrick Center Vocational Program, funded by the new Keats Vance Grant, had their first class this morning. They are so excited. We are, quite literally, changing lives. I read the email. Then I read it again. I looked up at the stars. So many stars. A spray of light in the perfect dark. I had lost a family. But I had built a life. The story was over. The knot was finally, fully, cut, and I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know what you think and where you're listening from. So drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to support us, please hit that hype button so more people can hear this.